Welcome back to Dirty 20, everyone. Today we take a look at running and playing your very first session of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Let's get on with the show. Thanks for joining us, lovely people. Now, in the past, we've made a video about kind of how to slowly get into D&D and, you know, the kinds of videos to watch and the things to do. And we have also done a video on Session 0, very important. But today, I want to kind of walk you through what a first session of actual play might be like. So, what do we actually need? Well, step one is making some characters. Stick around for the second part of our video where we're going to build some characters that you might want to use. And if you want a full breakdown on character creation and some interesting ways to do your character creation, we've also done a video on that. Once you have your characters, the next thing you need is a dice set. There are websites out there, including Google, that will kind of roll dice for you, but honestly, one of the most fun things about playing RPGs is very much that you get to roll the dice. A little trick that I picked up when introducing people to the game is to have each of the different dice in a different color. So have your D20s be red, your D10s be white, your D12s be black, whatever it might be. And that way, instead of saying, okay guys, roll a d20 for me, which inevitably ends up in blank faces and people saying, which dice is that? You can just say, okay guys, roll the red dice for me. And slowly people will start to get accustomed to those dice. Now, the adventure. Now, there are lots of great campaigns out there and pre-written adventures and one-shots and so on. But today I want to go with something really, really simple, and that's kind of the beginning of a session. Now, starting an adventure in a tavern is a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It works. Start out by describing the patrons and the environment, the building itself. For example, the usually crowded tavern, alive with song and merriment, is somber and quiet. You take a seat at a free table and take a look around. The patrons all sit nursing their tankards of ale and sitting in silent reflection. Something is wrong. So there you've set the scene and kind of laid out the geography. Now you will get to use one of the most important phrases a DM ever utters. What would you like to do? Now, at this point, don't worry if your players look at you with kind of puzzled looks on their faces, but this is a very important moment. One of the most interesting things about RPGs is that you can literally do anything, but often when people are presented with the choice of doing anything, they kind of freeze up. They don't really know what to do. There are a couple of things that I like to do to help new players. You could give them some examples of what to do. For example, would you like to order a drink or some food? Or you could bring in a character that prompts them. A barmaid walks up to your table. You see her bloodshot eyes revealing she has been crying. She manages to get out, "What can I get for you fine adventurers?" This is called a social encounter, and we have a whole series on videos on the 3 different types of encounters that exist in RPGs, and specifically Dungeons & Dragons. Social encounters are great for kind of settling people in. There's not too much rule crunch that you have to worry about. It's about having a conversation. I always try and encourage people to speak as their characters. So rather than my player saying, oh, my character orders an ale, I'll encourage them to speak out and say, I will take an ale and some stew. Or something like that. Now, the danger with being able to do whatever you want is that some players might decide to do something, well, inappropriate or violent or just attack someone. That's quite common. Now, this is where a Session 0 really comes in very handy in that you have talked about the kind of game that you want to play, and as I've talked about in videos in the past, I like to play a heroic style of Dungeons & Dragons game where my players are more heroes than they are anti-heroes or villains. Although I do like an anti-hero. But if everyone agrees to an evil campaign, then at least you know what you're getting into. Otherwise, you have to use a little psychology. Now, if you notice, I described the barmaid as having been crying. Here, I'm trying to engender a little bit of sympathy for her. I have found, though, that younger kids, particularly boys, don't really care about that kind of thing. And if you're planning on playing with a table of young boys, be prepared for a lot of random violence. In these sorts of cases, having an NPC mentor kind of character, by NPC I mean non-player character, a character that you as the dungeon master control, and then having them lead by example and you know, being clearly the kind of Gandalf figure or something like that. Now, thus far, we haven't rolled any dice or even looked at our character sheets, which might surprise some people, really. But as I said, role-playing games are a lot more about the conversation and the shared story than rolling dice and looking at statistics, although that is part of it. And the dice are there for a reason. You might be asking, well, when do I ask players to roll dice? Now, this is a debate that is had on forums around the world when it comes to RPGs. When should a dungeon master ask their player to roll the dice? But let me give you a simple example. Say one of your players, after you've asked the question, what would you like to do, says that they'd like to eavesdrop on a conversation that's being had somewhere in the tavern. Right? Now, at this point, they're trying to do something which is not particularly easy, and so they could be successful, they might not be successful. Here is where I would ask my players to roll the dice. Now, I would ask for a perception roll in 5th edition. Now, this is where a DM screen can actually come in kind of useful, because you have kind of descriptions of what particular skills are connected to what attributes, and when you might roll for something when a player is trying something. But there are loads of kind of cheat sheets online, including the one you're seeing right now, which is one of my favorites. And it gives you examples of what the stats are about and what would be an easy, moderate, or a hard check. Now, don't worry, as you play more, you will just learn to gauge this more easily. Listening to a quiet or whispered conversation would be a moderately hard thing for me, so I would ask my players to roll a d20 to add whatever their bonus is according to their stat or skill, and if it is over 15, then they have been successful. If it is under 15, then they haven't been successful. But that's not where I really leave it. Something I always try and do in these kinds of situations is think of a partial success. So imagine the player who is rolling their perception has a wisdom of 12, which would give them a +1 on their perception roll, as long as they're not proficient or anything like that. Now, let's say they roll a 10, add the 1, they've rolled 11, which is under 15, but it's not a catastrophic failure, right? It's not a natural 1. So I would give partial information in this situation. You hear 2 men talk about a recent tragedy, but you can't quite get more details than that. A quick reminder here that technically there is no such thing as a critical success when it comes to rolling skills. Also, no such thing as a critical failure by rolling 1. But I'll be honest, I kind of bend that, and I tend to give a little bit extra if someone rolls a natural 20. It's just more fun. But if your players do roll a natural 20, it doesn't mean that they automatically succeed, particularly if they're trying something that is nearly impossible. And this brings up a good point. It's up to you to tell players that they can attempt something. If something seems absolutely ridiculous and impossible, then you don't have to allow them to do it. However, I kind of lean towards the improv maxim of yes and. And another very typical phrase that a DM utters is, you can always try. Now, once you have let your players kind of get used to this back and forth, rolling some dice and, checking on their character sheets, it's time to move on with the story, I think. Probably around 15 to 30 minutes into the first session. A quest giver is needed now. So it could be the gruff barman, or it could be a slightly intoxicated guardsman. And this is really where you can have a lot of fun doing voices for different characters as a dungeon master and really kind of just stretch your improv abilities if that's what you're into. But don't worry if not, you can always just describe these interesting characters. So I would reward any information gathering that the players have done by revealing that the Lord's young daughter has been kidnapped by bandits. And this is where things start to branch out a little bit, and players have to make choices about what they want to do. Do they want to go to the Lord and find out more information to try and help them? Do they want to search for the bandits and try and rescue the daughter for a reward, maybe? Or do they not care, and maybe you've got to set up another kind of quest that they might be interested in doing? Now, there's always a slightly different unspoken agreement when it comes to if you're playing a one-shot or if you're playing a campaign. In a one-shot, you tend to just go with whatever's happening. The first thing that comes along that sounds like an adventure, you kind of reach and grab it and go for it. In a campaign, you might be a little bit more selective. You might think about your own goals and, you know, beyond rescuing the daughter of the Lord, you might want to gain political favor with the Lord, and that's what motivates you. Or you might not care at all about that and you want to research something different. But again, it's all part of session 0 and the ability to talk about what kind of game you're looking for. But let's say that our players bite on the hook and decide that they want to find out more. I like to give 3 different options. Maybe again, from their information gathering, they found out some different information. So as I said, maybe first they could go and visit the Lord, find out more information and offer to help. In which case you design another kind of social encounter with some more kind of, you know, deception rolls and insight rolls and persuasion rolls. Or you might go searching for the bandits in the woods and try and rescue the Lord's daughter. In which case you'd be doing something of an exploration encounter. And here, you know, if you have a ranger, as we're going to build in our second part, you would use certain skills that they would have to track and try and find the bandits. Or maybe you could go to the local guards and find out what information they might have. You have options, and I think it's good to have lots of different options because players will surprise you with not really going the way that you thought they would. But there we are, we're off on an adventure. Now, a few other things that you should try and have ready, particularly after that first social encounter. Stat blocks. I would definitely have some for the bandits, and also probably some for some beasts that their party might encounter whilst they're, you know, searching for the bandits. And a lot of these stat blocks you can get either from the Monsters Manual or, like I say, from pre-written adventures and stuff like that. There's lots of stuff on the internet as well. And although this isn't really important for that first session, you need to start thinking about the main bad guy, the big bad evil guy, as we like to call them. You should try and make them interesting, at least character-wise, if not with their stat block. You might just choose a bandit captain, which they have in the Monster Manual. That doesn't mean that they have to be dull or boring. Before we jump into our character building section, please make sure that you have subscribed to the channel and give this video a like, as it really helps us. Okay then guys, so here we are for our character building section. Now today we're going to do something just a little bit different. Rather than taking one character and building them up to say level 4, we're going to take 4 different classic classes and build them to level 1 and just kind of talk our way through them, okay? So we're going to use our 5th edition character sheet app, as we always do. Guys, if you want to sponsor us, we'd be happy to do that, but we love using you anyway. So here we go. And first off, we're going to go with a human, and we're going to go just a straight up human. We're not going to go variant. We're not going to start introducing feats or anything like that. We're going to go fighter. And we're going to have his background be a soldier. Okay, really, really classic is what we're going for. We're going to do our kind of, our version of the classic four party members party with a fighter, a ranger, a cleric, and a wizard. And the reason for that is that these four roles that exist very classically fill the kinds of roles and needs that a party might have. And we'll talk more about that as we go. Okay. Now, we're going to go with our usual heroic array. And I'm going to go 16 strength. I'm going to go 15 constitution. I'm going to go 12 dex. I'm going to go wisdom 11, charisma 10, and intelligence 8. Now you'll notice that we actually get a +1 on everything, which is about the only good thing about the original human. So let's go with that. We're selecting 2 skills. We've already got athletics and intimidation. Again, we're going to go real classic. So I'm going to go, perception, I guess. Our wisdom isn't that great. And I'm going to go survival as well, just because why not? Now, a fighting style. Okay. I like big old heavy fighters, and a great weapon fighting style means that you get to reroll 1s and 2s on two-handed melee weapon damage dice, which is pretty cool. It means that we're definitely going to go for like a two-handed axe or sword or something in that kind of range. So let's go next. Now let's go chainmail, because that is good for our armor. Martial weapon. Do we want a shield? No, because we're going to go two-handed. It's always nice to have a light crossbow with some bolts, just because otherwise you don't have much to attack people from range. No spells or anything like that. So let's go with that. Okay. And we're going to call our man Wolf. Okay, that's going to be our first fighter. Let's jump into our armor, and we're going to select his chainmail. It is heavy. Okay, so you need a minimum strength of 13, and you have disadvantage on stealth, which can be a bummer, but it means that your AC is 16 from the get-go, which is very nice. And then we have a strength of 17, a con of 16, some pretty nice bonuses. Our intelligence is still -1, but we could get it up if we wanted to once we get an ability score increase. Yep, all round pretty good. Now then, weapons. I'm going to go martial and, melee. Ooh, double scimitar. That's 2 scimitars, which is not kind of what we're going for. Could go more. I'm thinking I like the longsword because it's versatile. Now, what versatile means is that usually if you just wield it with one hand, you do 1d8 damage. But versatile means that you can wield it with 2 hands and it goes up to 1d10. So you always have the option of wielding a shield if you absolutely want to, right? Again, upping your AC by 2 up to 18, which then pretty much makes you a tank. There's nothing wrong with that. And that is pretty much it. Let's have a look at our features. So, soldier, you have influence within your former army or organization. Fighting style, great weapon. Fighting, reroll 1s and 2s on two-handed melee weapon damage dice. So I believe that we can apply that when we use versatile. If we couldn't, though, I have always been a very big fan of like a glaive or a halberd. They've got reach. They're heavy and two-handed, and they do 1d10. So again, nothing wrong with that at all. Okay. Now, healing 1d10 plus level hit points as a bonus action. This is your second wind, right? And you obviously have proficiency in all the armors, all the weapons, and yeah, solid character at level 1. I always think fighters start out, pretty decent. But let's move on to the ranger. Okay, guys, so let's jump in, and this time we're going to go again super classic. We're going to go some sort of elf for our ranger. Why don't we go wood elf? And we're going to go ranger, and as his background, why not do him, for example, like a noble wood elf ranger. And again, we're using our heroic array, but this time we're going to go 16 dex, wisdom 15. And here I really am kind of min-maxing, so really kind of putting things in the places where I get the most benefit. So my dex is going to be 18, my wisdom is going to be 16 because of the stat bonuses that you get. Now, I am thinking I'm going to probably go Constitution 12, Charisma 11, Strength 10, Intelligence 8. Now I feel bad because I'm dumping intelligence twice here. But again, unfortunately, this is the kind of thing that you do with your fighty people. So we get to select 3 skills. Now I'm going to go stealth, survival, and nature. In fact, not survival because I gave the fighter survival. Doesn't matter if people kind of overlap their skills, but it's also nice to have a kind of, nice wide range. And I'm going to go then insight. Now, tracking or marking, these are optional features. Again, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, Xanathar's Guide to Everything are 2 excellent books to add to your collection if you only have the Player's Handbook. But for example, tracking gives you gain advantage on survival and intelligence checks concerning your chosen creature type, and a language spoken by those creatures. Or marking, proficiency times per day. You can concentrate to mark a creature you hit for a minute, dealing 1d4 extra damage once per turn. Sounds very complicated, but let's go with marking. It just means you're going to get the player who uses this character is going to roll more dice when they do damage, which is always more fun. Okay, so here I'm going to go Overland Travel. You know how I feel about languages, and expertise is very, very useful. But here we do want our kind of tracker to be what he's good at, right? And that includes gaining advantage and on intelligence checks concerning your chosen terrain and bonuses while traveling through that terrain. So you'd probably again choose the woods or the forest, right? Okay, so let's go leather armor. I always prefer leather armor. Short swords, fine. Dungeoneer's pack and our longbow. So we have our wood elf ranger, and we're going to be cheeky and we're going to call him Leggy, in honor of the great elf Legolas. But there we have it. We've got very nice pluses on dexterity, which means that our longbow and short sword attacks are going to be really good. Now we do get spells later, but don't worry about that for now. Let's have a look at the features. So you have within 60 feet of you, treat dim light as bright, darkness as dim light. Immune to magical sleep, advantage on saves versus charmed. Meditating 4 hours counts as 8 hours of rest. Perception proficiency, longsword, shortbow, longbow proficiency. Can hide while lightly obscured by natural phenomena. That's all your elf features. And so it's hard to kind of always argue why anybody would choose not an elf. But, you know, again, it's a personal choice. Now, noble feature, you can secure an audience with a local noble. Nice, but again, these kind of background features aren't that interesting necessarily. And now the ranger features, you are marking, so proficiency times per day, you can concentrate to mark a creature you hit for a minute, dealing 1d4 extra damage once per turn for your one attack. So essentially, if you mark a creature, you can add a d4 of damage to what you roll, which is 1d8 plus 4 on your longbow or 1d6 plus 4 on your shortsword. And then Overland Travel, gain advantage on wisdom and intelligence checks concerning your chosen terrain and bonuses while traveling through that terrain. Again, if you were to choose the forest, it means that you'd be very good at tracking people and, you know, finding them, which would be very useful for this adventure. Now, you then have, you know, all the weapon proficiencies, the armor proficiency, shield, some languages, and all your stuff. So there we have it. Leggy, our Wood Elf Ranger level 1. Okay, so back in. This time we are building a Cleric. And the kind of classic Cleric is very much a Dwarf Cleric. And you have these different types of dwarves. I think mountain dwarves are kind of the old gold dwarves, I think. And hill dwarves are the kind of more regular ones. But we're going to go hill dwarf, cleric, and we're going to go acolyte. Very easy. Now, here. What do we want? Oh, we want a lot of everything. Wisdom's going to be important. So we've got to consider that. Strength is going to be important, especially if we're also going to be a heavy armor wearing kind of brawler tank kind of thing. And always constitution's important, but luckily we get a +2 being a hill dwarf. So I think I'm going to go with strength 16, wisdom 15, constitution 12, intelligence 11, dex 10, charisma 8. Yeah, I think so. Okay, now 2 skills. We're going to go medicine and we're going to go history. We already have persuasion. Sorry, we already have religion and insight. Now our persuasion, yeah, well, our charisma is really not going to be great. So let's go with that. Now, with clerics, you get to choose your kind of archetype from level 1, which is really nice. And the cleric is probably, maybe with the barbarian, one of the best served classes. But here, what the cleric has always classically done is made sure to keep his compatriots alive. So, if we're going to go that route, then life cleric is by far the best cleric, and we're going to get some spells and stuff like that. But let's go with that. Now then, I'm going to go mace is pretty cool. Scale armor or chainmail. I'm going to go chainmail. Why not? Heavy armor. We don't really care about being quiet. And then we're going to go... I think I'm going to go some kind of axe. At least, yeah, I think I'm going to go hand axe, to be honest. Just because for me, a dwarf isn't really a dwarf without an axe. But, you know, obviously you can use them in melee combat, but you can also throw them, which is pretty cool and sounds very dwarfy to me. So we're going to go that. Priest pouch, sure, shield, and holy symbol for casting our spells. Okay, now we're not going to go quite as obvious with our references to the Lord of the Rings, but I'm going to go with Garn. Garn, the Dwarf Cleric. Okay, now first thing as usual is we're going to go to our armor. We're going to go heavy and we're going to go chainmail. Once again, you are slowed if you are under 13 strength. I never recommend that. And disadvantage on stealth can be a pain, like I said, but it's fine. It's what they're there for. Armor class 18. How about that? That is very nice. Now then, yeah, skill-wise, our wisdom, our insight, medicine, those bits are great. Our charisma is god-awful. We have our mace and our hand axe, which are pretty good. Our strength is decent. Now, we get some cantrips and some first level spells. Okay, so at first level, we get 3 cantrips and 2 first level spells. And the light cleric gets bless and cure wounds as kind of standard. But we're going to choose 3 cantrips, and guidance is one that is always very popular. Be careful though, because players will just tell you, look, basically before I do anything, I'm going to auto cast guidance, and you have to just accept that. But light is also quite useful. Now, as you will see, dwarves also get dark vision, so you know that's one that you might not necessarily want. Then we're gonna go with Spare the Dying. Again, we are going with a very classic kind of build, and this is your healer cleric, right? You touch a living creature that has 0 hit points, the creature becomes stable. This spell has no effect or on undead or constructs, which is fine, we're not worrying about that. But basically it means that if somebody goes down to 0 hit points, rather than them having to make death saving throws, they are considered stable. They're still unconscious, but they're stable. So let's have a look at the features. Now, dwarf within 60 feet of you treat dim light as bright, darkness as dim light. So that's a dark vision. You've got the wood elf that also has a dark vision, the human who doesn't, and we're going to see with our 4th, I think we're also probably going to go human, in which case it might be handy. I do quite like the cantrip Thaumaturgy. It doesn't really do much, but it can kind of like grab people's attention. If you think of that scene with Gandalf and Bilbo, where Bilbo's refusing to kind of give over the ring or to show it to him, and he makes his voice kind of seem very big and the room to kind of darken. That's kind of what Thaumaturgy does. But then we have double proficiency to history checks concerning stonework. You know, great. Dwarves have that. Also advantage on saves versus poison and poison damage resistance. That is very nice. Proficiency with all those nice things, and gaining 1 extra hit point per level is also nice. Your acolyte feature, receiving aid from those who share your faith. And our cleric archetype, life, healing spells of at least first level, heal an additional 2 plus spell level. So again, you're really maximizing how much healing you do. Pretty cool. I like Garn. Okay guys, so finally we are going to make a human, once again, just straight up human wizard. And he is going to be a sage for his background. Now, here, for the first time, we are not going to dump intelligence. We're actually going to bump it. So we're going to go 16 intelligence. This one's tough now. Constitution is so important. I mean, not just for your kind of concentration saves, but also just you don't have a lot of hit points. So the more you can pump into that, I think the better. So I'm going to go 15 there. I'm going to go 12 dex, means my armor is going to be garbage. But that's okay. Then we're going to go wisdom 11, charisma 10. Oh no, actually, let's go charisma 11, wisdom 10, strength 8. Because the wizard's going to be the talker of the group, and he's not going to be great at it, but we're gonna go with it. Now then, we're going to go 2 skills, investigation and insight. He's got to be the kind of cunning one. Now there we go, 9 hit points at first level. Oh, I would just be hiding anytime combat broke out. But we're going to go with that. Quarterstaff. I'm going to go arcane focus. I've talked about components in a previous video, not really being a fan of keeping track of them, so I prefer the arcane focus. We'll go scholar's pack, and then obviously our spell book. We're gonna do a little homage to one of my favorite characters from Acquisitions Inc. We're gonna call this wizard of ours Jim, in honor of Jim Dark Magic. This isn't the original Jim, but you know, it's the greatest tribute to Jim ever. So, there we are. Armor class 11. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Thank God for our dexterity being +1. And again, we get another point on it, and it'll go up to 12. Not great. We'll hopefully be able to fix that with some of the spell choices that we're going to make. Our intelligence is great. Our con is really nice as well. We have really nice bonuses on the things that we're supposed to be good at, which is what you want to aim for. Quarterstaff, 1d6 damage -1, because your strength is your strength. But here is where the wizard really kind of gets to shine, which is with his spells. So let's begin by I always like message. One of the biggest problems that party members often find, particularly when they kind of split up, which is just always what happens, is they can't coordinate, they can't communicate with each other, even though they are at the same table and are able to talk to each other. Next, I'm going to go with a damage dealing cantrip. I really can't look past Mind Sliver, which is a spell from Tasha's. It causes psychic damage, and it also has an impact on the next save that your target tries to make. So I really like that. Now, next, I think you could do a couple of different things. Mind illusion is always great, especially when it comes to making distractions, things like that. But I think it's hard to look past Mage Hand. Mage Hand is one of those spells that you always regret not having when you don't take it. So that's what I would say. First level spell, I think you can't look much further than Mage Armor. Mage Armor, you touch a willing creature who isn't wearing armor, and a protective magical force surrounds it until the spell ends. The target's base AC becomes 13 plus its dexterity modifier, which for us is +1 right now. It could be +2 soon. The spell ends if the target dons armor or if you dismiss the spell as an action. Again, very useful. I would take it. Now for your second first level spell, you could go Magic Missile, which is it's a guarantee hit. You don't have to roll to hit, but you've already got Mind Sliver. I guess you could go Shield. Again, very defensive though, especially if you've already taken Mage Armor. I think, I mean, I'd be tempted to take Jim's Magic Missile, which is from Acquisitions Inc. and would be very thematic for this character, but it's always useful to have Detect Magic. And I know Identify is also in that kind of very useful spell. But Detect Magic, I think, is less about kind of finding funky magic items and more about, you know, are there traps around here? Are there things like that? And you can also find funky magical items. But there we have it. Our wizard, level 1. You frequently know where to find information concerning lore. That is your sage feature. Regain half your level, minimum 1 worth of spell slots during a short rest. Useful, but not super useful. Now, the wizard, as opposed to the fighter, I think starts off very slow, very weak, not with a lot of spells, but there kind of comes a tipping point where the wizard becomes exponentially better than pretty much all other characters in the game. So there we have it. That is our party of Jim the wizard, Garn the dwarf cleric, we have Leggy the wood elf ranger, and we have Wolf, our human fighter. Pretty decent party. Let us know what you think about them in the comments below. There we have it, lovely people. Now, it really is as easy as that. Learning the rules will happen as you play, and you will inevitably get better as you go. So, what are your thoughts on this? For those more veteran players watching, what would be your advice for a new DM starting out on their first session? Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, keep slaying. If you've enjoyed this content, then please smash that like button, subscribe, share this around online, and come and visit our website, www.lavictoriaproductions.com, to see all our past episodes, as well as our blog posts and all the stuff that we're currently working on at La Victoria Productions. Why not reach out to us and tell us what you think of our videos? You can reach us on Twitter. At Mouth La Victoria is our producer. We are also on Instagram. I am Enano LVP, and our producer is Jazzy J Cherot. We're also La Victoria Productions on Facebook and LinkedIn. Come on by and let us know what you think.